thing, the / as like a break.
Hello and welcome to the Gooners podcast. Guys, we're going to let out a little secret here. Mike is going to be so mad when he comes on to figure out we've gone live because he's having some computer issues. And Michael Hernandez, we were just actually in off air talking about how Mike resembles the movie Frozen a little too much with his let it go hairstyle and the fact that he was, in fact, frozen. What are you drinking, B?
Coffee.
Oh, me too.
Clear.
Me too.
It kind of looks like it's some sort of soda, which is disgusting. But
yeah, I was going to say that looks like Diet Coke. How are you, buddy? It's been a while.
It's been a while. I'm doing well. Kind of on the back stretch of bronchitis, which was never fun. So I don't know. It's nice to be like functional again, but it would be a lot nicer if Arsenal didn't ruin my day every weekend.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. We were worried about you for a while. Bronchitis, man, that doesn't go away quickly. That sticks around for quite some time. Yeah, and then Arsenal. I guess we'll get to that. We weren't gonna pod, and then we decided to pod. It was kind of one of those. I made the executive decision, and then everyone's like, "We need to pod." So I don't know, man. I didn't have great vibes going into this. Whenever we come off an international break, I never think to myself, we're going to play well. And I went back because I was thinking, okay, how well do we play post-international? And believe it or not, we actually win most of the matches, but it's never convincing. I think it was 2014 was the last time we lost after an international match, and that was Tottenham. But, yeah, I mean – I don't even know where to start. Let's go to the lineup.
I mean, I guess just to like hit on the international break issue, I guess that's like one of the things that I ended up being most frustrated about because you literally have 2 weeks to prepare for a side that is recently promoted. And
a side that hasn't changed its tactics for months.
Forever. I mean, and like there's something to be said about them playing their style and like always imposing the way that they play and that weird three at the back kind of flexy offensive thing that they do. But it just I feel like it's an indictment on Emery that you're kind of feeling like we come out of international breaks because there is that recency bias, where we come out of this time where you have all this extra time to prepare and we're consistently just finding ourselves in situations where we're playing teams that realistically we should be beating and are just falling short. And it's not because of the players on the pitch. And that's like kind of, I don't know, I feel like there's been this growing unease in the fan base, and you can kind of see it reflected in the way that the players are actually putting things together. But
let me ask you this. We come out of the break. We're pretty excited. I text our little WhatsApp group saying Twitter meltdown if Holding, Bellerin, or Tierney aren't in the squad. And Tierney obviously doesn't make the starting 11. However, he's in the squad. Bellerin doesn't even make the traveling squad, so he's clearly got some issues that he's still working through. But Tierney not playing yesterday was because Emery said, hey, there's no reason to drop Kolasinac. I completely agree with that. However, Tierney is a better player. So the sentiment of, hey, Kolasinac has played well, he should be continuing to play. Do you believe in that, or are you saying, hey, best 11 starts every game? Because you kind of have to juggle that fine line of keeping your players happy and knowing, like, hey, if you're playing well, you get your squad. But at a certain point, you have to go, there's a clear and obvious upgrade. We should be playing our best players. Right.
And I think that's like, yeah, I mean, it's like becoming so painful almost, like these kind of like we have an idea of what everybody thinks the best lineup is. And I think it's really interesting that a lot of like the people that are like, wait, like, look where we're at in the table. We're in third. Things are going well. A lot of that argument kind of was like based around the idea that like, this is where we're at and we're about to have Tierney back. We're about to have Bellerin back. We're about to have Holding back. And we're going to be able to play our strongest lineup. But having those players back and not playing them just undermines that whole I felt like that was like the string that was kind of keeping Unai hanging on in the way that like the fan base was kind of feeling about his ability to really take us forward. And it was like, okay, like let's give him the time to see if he's going to be able to turn it around once everybody's fit and we have our full 100% squad. But what we're seeing now, and it defies reason, because like now both Bellerin, Holding, and Tierney are probably going to be playing on Thursday, and then that locks them into the wrong side of the rotation schedule. So now you basically precluded yourself from including them because they are coming off injuries and they can't play two matches in 4 days, you know? So I don't know. It's really kind of getting to the point where I feel like it's almost like Groundhog Day, and we're just kind of like rehashing the same talking points because that's what's going on. Like, I don't know. I was tweeting out that Einstein insanity quote where you do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. You are defining insanity. And if that's not the Gooner condition right now, then I don't know what possibly could be.
I feel like that's been the Gooner condition for the last 6 years. And speaking about conditions, we've got Mike, who's finally joined us.
Am I here or am I not here? I don't even know if I'm fucking here or not.
You're here.
The beard is definitely here.
God damn.
And it's looking good.
My computer and my entire day apparently is not cooperative with my beard. This has been the shittiest day. I'm on fucking tilt right now, and then I can't even get on the computer to vent with these lovely people in the chat. Did I hear you say though in my lag hell that you have no problem with Kolasinac continuing to stay in because he hasn't done anything wrong, Andy?
I said I have no problem with the manager saying that he has played well enough to not be dropped. I have not seen, in my opinion, Kolasinac make mistakes that would keep him in the squad like Xhaka. But the question to be was,
which I did
about what he's doing, not what he's saying. He's protecting Kolasinac by what he's saying, but if that is fucking keeping Tierney out of this lineup because Kolasinac hasn't screwed up yet bad enough to be pulled,
that's why I asked the sentiment question. Does sentiment matter in this point? You know?
No.
Well, should it?
No. And you know, it's not like it's a decision between do we take Kolasinac out and try somebody else there like Maitland-Niles or somebody else who may be able to play the position. We have a guy who is healthy from all
we've coveted.
We know, Andy, we know that was their main target this summer, more so even than Pepe. He's finally rehab. He's played at least 3 or 4 games, all 90 minutes, and played well in them. Took off 2 weeks where he could have been playing for Scotland to continue to get healthy enough. Was healthy enough to be on the bench, and didn't get a minute on the pitch because Kolasinac was there. I mean, would that have affected the play yesterday? Quite possibly because of the crossing.
Well, I mean,
is it a bigger problem that these shifts in personnel don't have to be triggered by just loyalty and complete fuck ups on the part of the people who are temporarily in those positions? No, it was his time yesterday to go in, and that's a huge signal of a problem from Emery that he and because that answer leads me to believe that as long as Kolasinac is average, it's going to continue to be Kolasinac on the weekend and Tierney during the weekdays.
Yeah. Well, if Kolasinac went down yesterday in minute 2, Tierney would have been brought on. No questions, right? So if he can play 88 minutes, he can play 95 minutes. And you're right. I think that tactically, Tierney has probably the same mindset of a Kolasinac. It's hard to say whether or not one player playing over the other would have made a huge difference yesterday, but attacking-wise, the crossing, after you put in 4 or 5 good crosses, then Sheffield United are likely going to change their tactics to say, okay, we're going to drift a little bit wider left, which then allows your middle and right to get a little bit open. I don't know.
He is a better player, all around.
Absolutely.
Kolasinac is better than Tierney at nothing other than running people over.
And chasing them away.
And that is not a criticism of Kolasinac. It is a compliment and a recognition of what Tierney is. And, you know, look, at some point you got to let him loose. His play and the frequency of his play and how he's gotten through those games over the last 4 to 6 weeks seems to be evidence enough that it isn't a fitness issue.
Well, and it also seems like I guess like this whole thing is exacerbated by the comments that Unai had on Friday, where he was explicitly talking about how Tierney's ready to go and healthy and looks good in training. And I just like the thing that I guess is so problematic about this for me is like it is like a bit of a microcosm of a lot of the problems that we seem to be having. But like if you're not going to play your best players for sentiment reasons, like this is not the right job for you. This is not the right club for you. This is not the right sport for you. It makes like this is professional football. Like you don't play somebody because you like them more than the other person. If the person that's being benched is significantly and like very clearly better.
And devil's advocate, I mean, again, we don't know what's going on the training pitch. We don't know what's the exact fitness status that people are telling Unai Emery. And generally, coaches of teams tend to have a little bit more of a deliberate and patient approach than fans on Twitter and podcasts do about players' personnel switches. I mean, it doesn't tend to be as reactionary and as quick to happen as we would all like it to be. But, there are some situations, and Tierney is one of them now that he appears to be ready, Holding possibly another one in a different kind of way. And certainly Torreira Xhaka, just seem to be confounding at this point.
Here's the confusing thing to me, Mike. We sat in a room this summer.
You love talking about that.
Where we heard that Tierney was the number one transfer target for Arsenal. And that until that got over the final couple of hurdles, nothing else was really going to happen. What happened after we signed Tierney? All of a sudden, all the other dominoes fell. So in my opinion, you've got Raul, you've got Vinay, and you've got probably Edu and Unai all on the same page. Like he is our number one target. And as B just said, on Friday, we hear he is 100% available to start playing. I understand the sentiment value of just saying to Kolasinac and the rest of the team, if you're in form and you're playing okay.
He's not in form.
But that's exactly it, right? It's like, I get that you're not dropping him, but you can go to a player and say, hey, you're getting dropped because he's
not Andre Santos quite yet at this point, but do we have to wait for that to happen?
Exactly, right? That's what I don't get.
This is what I don't get. I'm tired of all this negativity about Arsenal. I know everyone's up in arms. I prefer to focus on the positives. And, this is another reason to watch us on YouTube instead of listening on your phone.
Is this a real article?
This is a real article, even though it is from the Mirror. But, I invested quite a long time ago in a Twitter, a keyword search function. I paid $1 million for it. And the one phrase that I have it searching for is two vaginas. And finally it paid off with this miracle baby. So, guys, when things are getting tough, ladies and gentlemen, and Arsenal looks to have absolutely no way out, and Unai Emery's in the shitter, just remember that this is possible, okay? You too can have a miracle baby despite having two vaginas. So just wanted to share that. I know it was on topic and everything.
But what vagina did the baby come out of?
I would imagine the left one, obviously.
The old left vagina.
It's the old left vagina trick. That right vagina is useless.
So we see another starting 11. We see another squad without Mesut in it.
At all after those comments.
It's like beating a dead horse, but at this point, are we gonna be any worse if he plays?
No, but at this point, it's that coach lost the battle element. That it's about pride at this point. And I'm not weighing in on whether it's right or wrong. I'm not as disturbed by Ozil not being in the squad as I am about Tierney not starting. And I know that puts me in the minority of people on Twitter these days who are seeing our diabolical performances and just assuming that Ozil would help out with that. And they may be right.
Not the same issue, though?
There's something about Ozil to me that stinks. And I don't mean his play. I just mean about the whole Ozil brand. It's the white pants that he wore in 2016. I haven't gotten over that yet. I don't know. It's something. It's something about that situation where I almost, I'm ready to support Ozil. I'm ready to support Emery and not playing him if there is an issue there. If he's getting instructions from above about freezing him out because he's Wenger and Gazidis' guy and he's not from the new, not one of the guys from the new. That I could deal with that and pushing him out and having him go in January.
But let me ask you this: do you not now
play?
question the judgment of Emery based off of what we just discussed via Kolasinac versus Tierney?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it was said about him at PSG that he had trouble with superstar players. But Tierney's not a superstar player, but his lineup decisions are confounding. I don't get it. I'm absolutely starting to lose it when it comes to Unai Emery. And you know how much I hate being proven wrong, but I'm ready to be proven wrong because, what I'm seeing is confusing me. It is starting to look very, very much like his predecessor.
No, B, let me ask you this. We saw Saka play yesterday, and he's been impressive, right? But it's clear that he is not at the level yet to help us compete for top 4. Tom Rosenhammer in our WhatsApp group made a comment last week that said, why not just throw Ozil on the left wing? We've seen him play there before. Does he not offer more to Arsenal on the pitch than Saka at this moment?
I don't know. I guess what makes this so difficult is I feel like we're now at a point with Emery that it's not even a personnel issue. It's like a tactical issue. So no matter who you put into those positions, they're basically being set up to fail. And like this is kind of like that thematic frustration that seems to have kind of like reinforced itself every match outside of Europa, which kind of continues to lend credence to the idea that Freddie is the one making a lot of the decisions there.
Just going to leave this up for the rest of the time.
It's covering Mike's face for me too. I don't know if that's the case for everybody, but it's a win-win. We just get the hair.
We just get the shiny bald hair.
Fuck you.
But I feel like if you're to play Ozil on the left, you're like further setting him up to fail. Because if you think about the way that we've been setting up tactically, and you look at somebody like Pepe, who is all pace, all downhill, Unai somehow found a way to consistently isolate him. And if you put somebody who has way less kind of like general athletic or ability / general work rate into that same kind of position, there's a zero. Like if he were to be slotted in there, it would basically be like setting him up to be like, oh, I told you so. And then he would have 1 bad game, 2 bad games, and then everybody would be back on the reactionary, vitriolic, anti-Ozil agenda bandwagon. But I don't know. It's now, I've never really had this feeling about Arsenal before because we've been like my entire lifetime basically was the Wenger era. And
weren't you born the same day that Squillaci was signed?
He's like, who?
He's like, what? I don't remember that old guy.
So here's where I'm at with this point to add to kind of B. We're in a weird, I've been in this scenario probably 10 years ago, right around the stadium time, where I was like, we're so stagnant, right? And we didn't see the growth.
Great way to describe it.
Here's what I'm seeing from Emery. I'm seeing a manager who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing because when he produced his PowerPoint presentation, it fell to one player. We're going to build the team around a Welshman named Aaron Ramsey. Then Aaron Ramsey never got the contract that he wanted, and so he shipped off to another club. Fair point, he got a lot of money. But if you really want that player to be the center point and focal point of Arsenal, then you go ahead and you re-sign that player and you give him the captain armband and you say everything is being built around you. That's what we were.
Andy just pulled a me.
I did actually.
Where's Granite at?
Yeah, that was for Xhaka.
Then to B's point, tactically, we're setting up all of the players to fail outside of a few players. Leno knows what he needs to do, and sometimes he's set up to fail because he's been tasked to play out of the back. We're seeing a manager, and it was a Global Football France Network, that Twitter account.
GFFN, yeah.
They brought up a great point yesterday. When he joined PSG, he came in with a 4-2-3-1 tactic he wanted to implement. And the board said to him, we want you playing 4-3-3. That's what's going to make us successful in Champions League. So he completely changed his tactics, and he failed. We have the perfect lineup to play that 4-2-3-1, right? You can
with
put
an actual 10.
With an actual 10, where you can put Ozil in there, and you can say to the other 10 players around him, this is what I need you to do. Hey, Mesut, just fucking run. Just go do what you need to do. Figure it out. He will. He's a great player. He will do that. That's my thing with Ozil is unless the people above him have said to him, we want you playing these specific tactics, which I very much doubt is the case, he is just banging his head against the wall, repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And he's fucking clueless. And I'm done with it. And I'm sick of it. And I'm totally on the just let Freddie take over and see what the fuck happens.
Whose PowerPoint was better, Unai Emery's or the one that I made last week for
Probably
for the starting 11 game with Lee Judges?
Probably Unai Emery.
B, in your haze of illness last week, did you have a chance to watch our podcast?
I did. I was the graphics.
Is that why you haven't been answering our messages for the last 2 weeks?
I've just been in like sick brain isolation. I don't know if anybody I have chronic bronchitis, so I get it. I used to get it twice a year, every year, and it's just absolutely brutal. And this was way worse because it was during all the crazy weather changes in Chicago. So I don't know. I was worried it was turning into pneumonia. Didn't, but it was very elongated.
Andy, who are I didn't ask for a medical breakdown. I'm just kidding, buddy. I'm just taking the piss, my friend. Who's the midfield pivot to in your 4-2-3-1? He's just trying to get you to say Shaka.
The thing that's even kind of ridiculous when thinking about our ability to play a 4-2-3-1 is clearly Unai favors that 8-10 hybrid role, which is why he wanted to build a team around Ramsey. And that makes a lot of sense if you're planning on playing that 4-2-3-1 with kind of a more dynamic, almost box to boxy type of 8-10, but we have Willock who can play that position. We have Ceballos who can play that position. And we just kind of throw them in there and are okay, hope for the best. And it makes no sense. I mean, and even thinking about Willock yesterday, I feel that was such a frustrating game to watch from just a specifically Willock perspective, because he was really set up to just be stuck and isolated in the middle. And he had less than 10 passes as a 10, essentially.
I think Torreira and Guendouzi make probably the best partnership in that.
It's got to be, right?
Yep. And then you can put Ozil, Ceballos in that number 10 role, and then you've got the opportunity to substitute out. So if Guendouzi's having an off match, you throw Willock on. But Torreira, to me, just seems to be that focal point. And listen,
what do you think he's thinking right now? How does he got to be feeling?
Exactly. And
whatever he's feeling starts with the fuck is going on right now.
Well, but even if you just look at we're talking tactics right now, even if you put our best 11 out there, you could literally put Xhaka in that pivot role and just say to Torreira, just float behind him, because we've all seen how good he can be with that right player there. We've talked about it for weeks. So tactically, I want to see something different. What's working right now isn't working, or excuse me, what's being implemented isn't working.
There's nothing working.
Why not throw it up? And if you're going to not move on the Ozil situation, if you literally just want to ship him in January, fine. We have 3 or 4 players who can fill in on that number 10 role. You could put Ceballos in there. Shit, you know who could play in that role right now? Lacazette, because he basically drops deep enough to fucking turn and go. So go ahead and put him in there. There's just so many options, and we're not doing a goddamn thing about it. And I made the comment yesterday, when you go out in your Arsenal Football Club, you can lose to City, you can lose to Liverpool, you can lose to Chelsea United, and you can turn around and go, okay, for they're on our level, right? We're not assured or guaranteed to win every match. I get that. But you cannot go away to these teams that we consistently drop points to and shit the bed.
I feel like before, though, is so late. If you're thinking about late Wenger era, when we're going away to these smaller teams, it felt like there was just a lack of intensity in the squad with actual players on the pitch. People were angry with the players on the pitch and angry at Arsene for not kind of I don't know, inspiring them, because it did this weird complacency seemed to set in near the end of his career. And like now it's not even I don't feel like it's the player's fault at all. Like it's getting to the point where the only thing that could be done is like a drastic tactical shift from Emery. And it's so funny to think about like us saying that now, because like he was kind of championed as being this like tactical genius who can like switch things up and is like super versatile in the way that he sets up for different teams. And
not so much.
Now we just see like the same. I don't know. I look back to the Liverpool game where we started playing that weird kind of like deep sitting pseudo counterattack thing that we've kind of seen permeate every setup since then, outside of Europa League, where we're just like free flowing and having a ton of fun and it's amazing. But I wonder if there's just too much comfort. Like there's a level of comfort for Emery knowing that there's not going to be any ramifications to us playing like this consistently, because we haven't seen anything.
I don't know that there's no ramifications to that. I don't get the sense, and part of this comes from things I'm reading on Twitter from people who are close enough that I believe that there's some truth in there. But and a lot of it also has to do with kind of what we know about the new regime and their expectations.
Yeah, I need Raul.
I don't see consistently putting performances like we have away to at Watford, away to Sheffield United, like we've seen a handful of times this season, despite only losing twice. I don't see this continuing on an ongoing basis, and there being no ramifications beyond not having his contract renewed, which may even be 3 years now, not 2. I think we may see that sooner or later. But my question at this point, because of what you're talking about, B, is, and I'll ask you too, Andy, how long before he loses the dressing room?
I don't know if it's necessarily a dressing room thing, because I think the players are going to stick with what's happening. I do think there's probably enough voice in there with David Luiz, Xhaka, Aubameyang.
Ironic that Xhaka was made captain, considering he's probably not the one that's going to lead the dressing room charge against Emery.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was actually pretty. Did you see his comments yesterday after the match?
Yeah,
I was actually very hard by those.
Yeah, he was
pissed. And that's what we want to be seeing from players who are basically put in situations where they are not going to be able to play well because.
So, Mike, to answer your question,
wait. He was pissed at what? He seemed pissed at critics, not at his play, his coach, the formation. He was pissed off at people talking shit about our performances. That's not the kind of being pissed off that you want to see.
No. I kind of read it as him being pissed off about like this, like, oh, it's okay to like we're getting results and it's like okay to like think about it through that lens.
Well, no, he was basically snapping back at Patrice Evra, and in doing so, a lot of Arsenal people, both legends of Arsenal and semi-legends like the three of us, as to just being critical about the poor performances. I mean, maybe I'll go back and read it. Maybe chat room, you can help us out a little bit, but I did not read that. If we're talking about the same comment, I didn't see that as being.
Let me get the quote. Maybe
I read the vibe of what he said more than like the vibe to me was that
he's always told me that he's great at reading people. That's his big thing.
Well, that's my job.
That's why you asked me to be on the podcast.
The vibe that I got was that he was getting sick of answering the same questions over and over again, and that it was constantly like, let's get to that point. Let's go back to your other point while B tries to find it. I don't think he's going to lose the dressing room, but I'm trying to think during Emery's tenure, there hasn't been a sequence of matches where I've thought to myself, here we go.
Good quote.
Here it is.
Do you want me to? I can. All right. So should I read it? Should I read the quote?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. He said, "We have to stop about mental bullshit like this. For me, it's the same whether you play home or away. You have to win and show a big character and a good game, not always find the same excuse." And it sounded to me like he was taking responsibility for this like lack of product on the pitch more so than him. Like obviously he was railing back against the idea that Arsenal are a bunch of babies. And that's like something that you would also kind of want to see your captain push back against. But I kind of, this felt different, I guess, tonally to me than a lot of the recent Xhaka stuff that's kind of more in line with the Emery status quo, and this felt more like it was like there is this growing tide of frustration within the locker room, and that's starting to kind of be externalized.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with that, Mike. I don't think he's going to lose the players. I do think, however, that there is going to be a point in the calendar that's probably been X'd by Raul and Vinay that said, if by this point we're not in touching distance of Champions League, we need to
the results. Like, we're not going to, I guess that this gets to like this whole big debate about like actual performance versus like results, I guess. And like, because if we would have won, we would have been 2 points behind City. Like, obviously we'd be having a very different conversation. And if it was like, even if it was like an ugly win, like the exact same match, Pepe scores and we don't concede, but everything else happens the same way, I'm still really frustrated after that match and thinking like, this is not something it comes down to whether or not these results are sustainable. And empirically they are not.
No. Like, here's the thing. If you're Everton and you're sneaking through and you're winning matches and it's not sexy, or if you're Leicester and you're doing the same thing, fine, you're a small team and you're playing above. We're Arsenal Football Club. We just dropped hundreds of millions of pounds on essentially 3 players that play in an attacking role. We should not be squeaking 3 points out week after week. If we play really well and we lose, well, that happens, right? But we're Arsenal Football Club. We should be going into these matches one step ahead of the other team just based off of who we are. And then we put a sequence of results together that lead to 3 points. And that's what I was saying. I can't think of any sequence of events where Unai has made me think, oh, shit, like we have figured this out now. We have like our identity and we're doing our damn thing. Someone put into the chat room a while ago, I think it may have been Thunder Road, you make one tweak in the tactics and based off of how Unai's implementing the system, then you create another hole.
Yep.
And that doesn't seem right. You would never hear that about Pep. You'd never hear that about Klopp. And you heard for a while, I was kind of on this board I think we've lost Mike, he's frozen, but I was on this thing of whole like, hey, Klopp needed time. His first couple seasons weren't great, but at least he had an identity and he was starting.
See what he was doing.
Exactly.
He was imposing his tactics and like his mentality on the squad. And it took a long time, or not a long time, but it took a little while for them to adapt to it. But like you could see that there was a future there. And I feel like we are now at a point where we are futureless with Emery. And that is not a good position to be in or a good feeling to be having. And I think that's something that is like a sentiment that is held by a majority of the fan base now. I actually put like I mean, obviously this is like a sample size thing, but last I checked, it had like 320 people that had voted on it. And I was like, should Emery be done after that performance? And it was like 85% yes, 10% undecided, and 5% no.
So let me ask you both a question, right? Let's put on our general manager hats, your CEO of Arsenal, owner, whatever. If I come to you and I say, if I'm playing the role of Edu and I come to you and I say, hey, listen, we're on the cusp of Champions League. We're going to be there. The football's not pretty, but we're securing it. And that money will be then reinvested into the squad to make better players, blah, blah, blah. Or I come to you and say, we're more than likely not going to make it with Unai at the helms. We might. Like, what do you do? Like, in that scenario, what do you say? Because both scenarios are we're not. If we're in 9th right now, and we're completely out of it, but we're not. We're still in and around, and we still have points on Tottenham.
But that's where the proactivity becomes so important.
So where does that?
That's where that like mentality shift that we thought that we were seeing during the summer with this new kind of cutthroat Arsenal, where we're dealing in ways transfer-wise that we haven't seen in the past, and like kind of willing to be a little more cutthroat in the way that we're operating. And I feel I don't know, it reminds me of like 15, 16 a little bit, just like way like a different feel, but like there's an opportunity here. Everybody else in the top 6 generally outside of City and Liverpool are struggling. And like, there is an opportunity here to really get a stranglehold on 3rd. And if you're going to be like, oh, we're okay, even if we flounder our way to getting 4th and secure Champions League, like what does that mean for the future outside of thinking, oh, like we have a little extra money and now we're playing Champions League football. But like if that happens and Emery's still the coach, I can't really see a scenario where he gets sacked after having made the Champions League, because that's what he's supposed to be doing. And then we're just in the same exact situation again next year.
No, but at what point do you think that the board is going to say, we're starting to see signs of the top four slipping away? Yes, we only slipped out of the top four yesterday, but looking at the table right now, if we don't get a result against Crystal Palace, we could easily find ourselves in 8th or 9th after Sunday.
After potentially being in third, 2 points back.
And showing no sign that virtually any game away from home is winnable.
That's where I think the board then step up and they go, okay, we've got a problem here, because
after Palace, so like if we lose to Palace, then the real
which I think we may well do, given the fact that our lineup against Palace is more than likely going to resemble exactly what it was. There might be 1 or 2 changes at most from Monday, which had 1 change from the Bournemouth slogfest that we won but didn't win pretty. And and so my question then is, like, for you personally, B first. I think I know the answer to this. Should they pull the trigger now?
Yes.
Should they wait until January? Okay, I'm just going to finish the question off so Andy has the parameters. No. Is it time literally now, or let's say after Sunday? Do you wait until after the festive period, because we got back-to-back games at home against Chelsea and Manchester United over the Christmas break, or holiday break?
We can't lose those.
Sorry, Jews, and fellow Jews, I should say. And or do you wait? I had to say that in case that
was out of context.
The Jew crew.
Exactly. Or, like I swore I would do you give it until May to see how the season goes off?
I'm saying
he's making the change now.
I'm saying you make the change now. Why? Because we're not seeing anything that's going to prove that he's going to change what he's doing.
Exactly.
We talked about the tyranny thing. We don't want to beat that, but there's just so many areas on the pitch that we keep saying, all you need to, like, okay, 4
all
years
you need
ago,
to do is this. Yeah.
4 years ago, it was, I wish we had the player that we could do this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now we have that player, and we're still not doing it. And it's a new man.
I wish our squad was at a level where you could just point to the coach instead of having this coach versus squad point. And I think we have that squad.
So, I would say let's shit can him and just let Freddie take over and let it figure it out. Because for me, at least, Freddie is going to have enough wherewithal for each match to make those changes. And I don't believe in the whole, Freddie's been given the reins for Europa League games. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely bullshit. But I would make the change now because, Mike, to your point of the Christmas break, by that point, we could be so far off the paces that it doesn't matter what we do. So I would say let's make the change now. If you could bring in a manager who's got that tenure in front of him and has the path to move forward, awesome. If not, let Freddie be the caretaker. Let him figure it out and bring him into May. But I have not seen enough from Unai Emery in the last year and a half to say to myself, he can make something change. Now, if we come out on Palace and we're completely different tactic and lineup wise, and he actually fucking pulls the cock from out of his ass and figures this shit out, then give him some time. But I'm done.
Got really sexy in here.
Yeah,
you brought up Tom Rosenhammer before.
I'm done. I think it's over for me.
So Matthew, for the second time, he brought up a comment about judging Emery when Tierney, Bellerin, and Lacazette are playing regularly. I'll throw Holding into that as well. There is something to be said for that, in the sense that I would probably give it, I mean, unless we just start losing every single game, but I would probably give it another month or so. And the reason is because, as angry as I am that Tierney, Bellerin, Holding, Chambers, that's the back four I want to see at full stop. Luiz and Socrates haven't been awful lately by any stretch, but that's the back four I want to see in the Premier League. I want to flip the script and play the kids.
Got to wait like a month because we've basically rotated ourselves out of play.
But this was the first game I truly believe And again, I don't know about fitness. I don't know about what he's being told about minutes availability and all that. But this is the game I believe they could have done that. Maybe not Bellerin, because Bellerin.
But we're looking for justifications at this point. We're
Well,
thinking like,
all
we have asymmetric information. Like we
all
don't have all
All I'm saying is that this was the beginning of me saying, okay, this is a trend where these guys are now ready and they're still being relegated to the B team and playing on Thursdays and in cup games on Wednesdays. And we may well go and beat Liverpool at Anfield in the League Cup, because we're going to have the strongest League Cup side possible, because it's going to be the side that we should be starting in the Premier League.
But Mike, to Matt's point, if one of these players gets an injury, we shouldn't be thinking like, oh my God, we need to wait for all the players to be back. I had that mindset before, and I'm fucking done with it, because even as B mentioned it earlier, even if you have all the players healthy, tactically they're being let down. They're being taught to fail, and that's the problem. And you can't keep waiting.
We're developing a losing culture, essentially.
We have a squad that can literally step up. Right? We talked a little bit about the Tierney Kolasinac issue. Tierney should be playing because he's the better player.
Yep.
But if he gets hurt, you should have the thought like, okay, Kolasinac is in, not great, but at least we have comfort in that player being able to fulfill what he needs to do in that role. Holding, working his way back in. He's down. Like, it doesn't fucking matter who's hurt, who's healthy. We should be playing better football than we are. We should be playing better football than we are.
I agree with that. But as far as pulling the plug, and I mean, it's a big
decision.
It's a big decision to recycle in less than 2 years. We've seen other teams do it, including teams that have gone to caretaker managers, then become full-time managers because they started off well. Yeah. We've seen it,
that's the
very,
situation
very recently with United. Yeah. And I'm hesitant to enter into that situation in the middle of this. Honestly, it was Bruce Rioch, the last guy who was sacked in the middle of the season. I
think that's the issue generally, is like we've kind of handcuffed ourselves by not making a decision proactively earlier, and thinking about, like, after last year, there was a lot of pushback against Emery, but it was like, okay, like he's going to get his players, he's going to be able to set up the way that he wants to, and things will be okay. We'll give him a little more time. But like, I don't know. Like the Maya Angelou quote is like perfect here. You know what I mean? Like if
you're just going to say that, and we're supposed to know.
No, I'm saying, like, if somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And like, I feel like that's where we're at right now, because like we have seen who Unai Emery is, and like the only way that we're able to kind of like twist it into being like, oh, there's something here, is if we go through all of these. Oh, but like he doesn't have his players. Oh, that like it's a cycle of justification. And if you're in that position, then it's time to pull the plug. And I guess, like, I understand the trepidation in doing that because there aren't the managers available. And if you put Freddie into that kind of caretaker role, if we do end up succeeding, it's very easy to kind of fall into that Ollie situation, which is something that we completely obviously want to avoid. And the only manager that is like a big time manager outside of Jose, who I hope is nowhere near consideration. That's like, but is Allegri. And because like all the managers that everybody are is kind of like excited about potentially, they all currently are coaching their teams, so like we're not going to be able to steal somebody away in like during the holiday season. So we either have to go with
we could if we paid a lot. I think the more realistic scenario here, guys, is that the board come to Unai and say, what you're doing right now isn't working. We need to see tactically something different, and put that on his plate rather than saying,
hopefully that's already happened.
I don't think it has.
I don't think it has
seen that change, right? But
as to your point, we were literally third place. They weren't going to go and do that in third place.
No,
why though?
They're not going to do that in fifth place. They might do it in eighth. Well, it's because like Arsenal doesn't operate that way.
But here's the deal: you have someone who is Unai Emery's. You have someone who is Unai Emery's boss that has won almost everything with Arsenal. Has been set up in a Brazilian side that almost won everything. You have Edu who's looking over this, and you know that he is not going to be happy with the way football is being played. Now, behind the scenes, is Unai sitting down with them saying, here's how I'm trying to do it, and the players aren't doing it? That's conversation we're not privy to. However,
You need the DOS
we're all
game
privy
now.
to what we're seeing every day on the fucking pitch, and it's not working.
And I think, like that's not even that's not even possible because we've seen what happens when we do it in Europa. You know what I mean? So if
Totally.
it's like that's what's so frustrating about this is like there are basically two different arsenals right now, and one of them sets up super freely and attackingly oriented, and one of them does whatever we've been doing since the Liverpool game in the league, and it makes no sense because like there is no way to justify what we're seeing on the pitch with the personnel that we have outside of being like, okay, Emery just needs more time because he doesn't have everybody back, which still makes no sense because even when he does have everybody back, we're going to have people playing positions that aren't their natural positions and people set up to fail.
Michael Hernandez says, do you guys believe we can get Rodgers in the summer? The answer is no, we cannot get Rodgers in the summer because he's already with a more lucrative and bright project than we are. So why would he leave?
Eddie Howe's the only one that
I as I said on Twitter today, oy vey,
is right. My two are Eric Ten Hag and Marcelo Gallardo, which would both be amazing, but
hipster. All right.
How is that a ding?
I don't know that.
I don't know, actually. Force of habit. Do we have a few minutes for a couple more points?
We've got like 5 minutes. Let's do it.
What was the game when the light switch finally went off with Arsene Wenger that it was time to go for you? Because I know exactly when it was for me. The what?
Europa League final.
It took you that long? I don't mean like to the point where you Europa League final.
Yeah, because I was still
Europa League final.
Semi-final, the Athletic game.
Okay, the semi-final.
The match against Chelsea for me.
Okay, but Emery coached that one.
Oh, yeah. What was your question?
When did you finally realize that Arsene Wenger? Like I'm trying to relate to now. When is this the game for you? It sounds like it is for the two of you that broke the Camels' back to name the podcast.
Years and years before that, it wasn't a match, Mike. It was the Van Persie. Being sold. That's how far back for me. I was probably 5 or 6 years before he left. 7 years thinking like this is it. Like dude's just lost it.
It was a point of no return. Okay, I held out a lot longer than that. B, what was the game for you?
I don't know if I can. I guess like kind of like Andy, like it felt like it was like a momentum, kind of almost like this weird stagnation that it was like a dynamic over a period of time where it was just like this is too much for him at this point. Like he's not gonna make the actual changes that we need, and kind of simultaneously with that we had a lot of really kind of problematic things coming from Gazidis. So it was just. I don't know. I think it was hard at the end of both of their tenures not to kind of like associate their downfall with one another, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. But to say that there was one specific game, even like with Unai now, I don't know if there was one specific game, unless this was.
Well, that's kind of my point. Like, are you feeling the same? Because I'll tell you, I'm feeling similar. I don't know if I'm there yet, and sometimes it takes some hindsight to recognize it. In chat, if you had a moment where you kind of officially were off, and I don't mean you were screaming Wenger out because I never did that to the very end.
Never did that.
But the point at which, I mean, the first time I considered it was against Stoke in December 2014. That was the game where we were losing 3-0 by halftime, came back, but still lost the game. That was the Joel Campbell get out while you still can day. That was the abuse at the train station day, which was disgusting. But there were people on Facebook. I wasn't even on Twitter yet, but there were people on Facebook that were just constantly like Wenger out, Wenger out, Wenger out. And I was like, I'm frustrated. I'm aggravated. Something's wrong, but give me your solution. What do you like Wenger out for what? You can't just scream Wenger out. Who's there? Who's going to do better? What's your suggestion? And so I was kind of challenging people at that point to be realistic. And I just wasn't there yet. But for me, it was March 2nd, 2016. I remember watching in the pub. We were 2 weeks removed from the Danny Welbeck against Leicester header on Valentine's Day, where we pulled within either 1 or 2 points of first place in February. And then we go on a 2-week break because of the FA Cup. We come back and turn Marcus Rashford's debut into a Ballon d'Or performance with our best opportunity to win. Everyone thought we were going to win at Old Trafford that week. And then the game that did it was 3 days later against Swansea. We come home after that Manchester United game and just shit the bed against Swansea, lose 2-1.
Oh, that was terrible.
2 weeks later, we're out of the FA Cup to Watford. 3 days after that, or 3 days before that, we're out of the Champions League, admittedly, to Barcelona. That was where it just became apparent that, tactically or not, the players just didn't get up for him.
Yeah.
So, Mike, we talked about that for a season and a half, right? Begging for tactical change. We're now on the same fucking roller coaster, my friend.
Yeah, no, it's very, and it's starting to look like, again, no matter what the intensity, no matter what it's trying, the players aren't listening. It's not.
And during that run last season, when we went 20 games unbeaten, it wasn't pretty, but we were down in matches, or we were.
I saw fight resilience that I'd not seen before.
Well, but he would make these little tweaks at halftime, and we'd come out. That was so the big thing. And you were like,
subs.
And every supporter was saying the same fucking thing. They were going, okay, maybe the players aren't good enough. Maybe the system he's implementing.
Where is that Unai?
Exactly. That's where I'm like, if that was the way we were playing now, and you're starting to see hey, he's trying to put a square peg into a round hole, but we're still getting the result, and you can point to the players not being the right players. I get that. But here's the deal. You essentially have a defensive midfielder / center back playing as your right back for the last month and a half, and he's been our best player in a lot of these matches. So that's not the case. We're looking at a manager now who won't fucking change. And as B said before you joined us, he had 2 weeks to prepare for a team that played the same fucking style every fucking week. And he could have, again.
Oh my gosh, it's so easy to set up against them.
Exactly. And
not
again,
only that, but the post-game interview with the players from Sheffield United and the coach from Sheffield United, I almost threw my remote at the television the 8th time I heard them say, we knew they would. I mean, we knew they would. We knew they would. This, that, and the other thing. And I'm just like, how did they know that we would? Why did they know that we would?
Because we're
yeah, I mean, I don't get it. And speaking of post-game interviews, and this is going to be my last point, I didn't much care for Emery's post-game interview yesterday.
No, he sounded like,
so angry.
It reminded me of how I felt about Arsene towards the end. Again, I used to love the voice of Arsene Wenger, classy, soothing, and then at some point it started to grate on me because it was like, it was like taking the piss. It was mocking. It was, it was kind of robotic in what he was saying, and I was just like, this isn't.
Yeah, but
this used to feel like a hug, and now it feels like a.
The only way that his press conference makes sense is if we had peppered 20 to 25 shots on goal and we were just unlucky.
Yeah,
that's the only time I would have walked away being like, "Yeah, the wrong team lost."
Does he exist in a separate kind of parallel reality?
Does every Arsenal manager apparently? I mean, it's just.
I mean, what makes it so hard to kind of for comparison's sake is Arsene was here for 22 years. There's no real way to be oh, this is the same thing. But this is a year and a half in, and if you are feeling that same way, that's not a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, there's not all the loyalty involved, and I just want to see him leave on a high. I don't really care if Emery leaves on a high. I care about our, how much there's a scab and a sore on us from becoming that team that flips managers every year or two. But that doesn't mean you should stick with something that isn't working. And I'm not really ready to too much longer. The voice from Unai Emery, I used to find it cute, and I used to like how he was talking about English, even though he wasn't very good at it. Yesterday, I really wish he hadn't said it in English because he said a bunch of fucking bullshit. We didn't deserve to lose.
Yeah, I felt like we were being gaslighted.
Bald and fat, but here the fuck we are. So,
but that's every week we have this same conversation after every Premier League press conference, and we're like, "What is he saying? Is he watching the same match? Are you trying to gaslight the entire football world?" You know what I mean? It literally makes no sense. And I don't know. I just something has got to give. that's the end all be all. We can't continue like this. It's not sustainable. And it really does feel like now like for so long it felt like our manager was being held back by our personnel, and now it feels like our players are being held back by our manager.
All right. Ask me at the end of November. I'm willing to give him until the end of November, and it isn't necessarily about where we are in the table anymore. I've again, I'm a flip flopper. Okay, I'm a fucking flip flopper. I wanted to give him till the end of the year. I said it wasn't about performance; it was about results. To me, now it's starting to become about performance. So, look, just because you saw it earlier than me doesn't make you any better. It just makes you righter.
I feel like the important distinction there is
I'm talking to just Twitter.
Yeah, like
I'm not talking to either one of you.
No, I know, but I'm saying, like I don't know, like this is the big debate, obviously, like performance versus like actual results, and I think it's like it really does come down to the sustainability of what the product is on the field. And
it's a problem when you get neither. That's the big.
And now you're 0 for 2. That's where we're at.
Yeah. So if that trend continues, and if we keep seeing wonderful games on Thursdays and awful games on Sundays, the patience is going to run out real quick.
Yeah.
So.
All right, boys, I got to run.
Yeah, sorry about the lack of user questions for the second week in a row, but you got to send more in if you want us to read them. So.
Yeah, what are y'all doing?
Yeah, and no, we didn't talk about Freddie's card.
I was so happy about that, though.
We'll do a special podcast.
I like to think that Freddie is now just gonna give him the job with the.
Can we just demote them so, like, if Freddie gets 2 yellow cards and he has to go off, Unai can come in and coach the rest of the game? Like, we don't have to get rid of him completely. We could just, make him our Thursday manager and Freddie our Sunday manager.
That would be awesome.
So hopefully we will be on early next week with a nice recap of Arsenal versus Crystal Palace. I have a feeling it's going to be a recap. I'm not so sure it's going to be a nice one, but in any case, if Tom was just still doing that quick take thing, I'd have a wonderful preview for this Sunday's game. But it was over before it got started. Rest in peace. Anyway, hope you enjoyed our bitch fest. Sorry about my technical difficulties. Believe me, it's the least of the things that went wrong for me today. And we'll see you guys next week. Come on, you Gooners.